Put up a post on his page there the other day of a hurling ball and the story about how if you lost the ball back in the day, it was awful because you might never get another ball, like, you know, unless you had a good dog to retrieve it or something. But I was born and reared in Eyre Street in Gorey, and when we were chaps, we played along a wall. Sometimes we played handball, the girls played ball, but the wall was probably as high as that there, 10 foot high, and when we were children, so that was 20 foot high. But if the ball went into this particular field, Connor's field, sometimes there was cattle in there, but the grass was you might find a big football that you were playing with, but you probably wouldn't find these. And come along 50 years later, I'm walking by this, and there's JCB working in the field, and there's a hole in the hedge. So I pops in and I walked around the perimeter of the wall, and I picked all these up, and I'm not saying I remember any of them, but these were the balls we would have used back in the day. You can see the inners of a schlitter there, which was done with a rope or cotton or rolled up, and then there was what we call Dunlops. These were for playing actual handball up against the wall, and these were called wind balls because it was only air inside them. So the place I was working in, I picked them up and I brought them up and I made a little box and I put them into the shed, and I thought no more about it till Michael done his post during the week, and I says, "Cheers, Mick, I must show you these." So Mick said, "Bring them out today." So that's the story on the balls when we were children. So that's 50 years ago. Yeah. So.
And the games were good, were they? Would you have loads of people playing games? How they all very organised?
Yeah, well, Eyre Street had families. Some of the families at Eyre Street could have had 14, 15 children in it. There was even 9 in ours, and the average would have been about 6 in the street. So you were never short of a team and subs, and you'd play hurling. If there was tennis on, you'd try a bit of that. We used to play curbs, you know. Yeah. Stumps was another one, sort of a mini cricket, but it'd be only played across the street, like so. So that's the story, like on the balls.
And would the rules be kept, or would people have their own?
There was no rules. No, whoever was the strongest won, or next goal wins, or that was about it, like, you know. Yeah. And yeah. And
then you'd be called into your
tea time, and then the second half would be an hour later or half an hour later, depending on what you got. So yeah.
God, that's great.
Yeah, so there you go. That's
Speaking of half an hours and the fear that comes on people, of my generation, we were going to bed on a Sunday and Glen Rose on, everyone knew it was time to go to bed. Remember that fear? We were going to go to school the next day. Remember that? Dunbar.
This is a script from Glenroe from about 2000, and it's episode 21, 17 series called After You've Gone. And this was actually Joe Lynch's script. It's on the back of it there. But this is a very interesting episode. This is when Mick Lally, who was and Mary McAvoy were leaving the series completely. Mick was going back on the stage. He was going off with the Drew Theatre to play a Sive and all this. So it's I'd say it's a fairly rare copy. I'd love to see it being reenacted again. And you know, there's the script and the lines in there for the different characters on the day, and there's the names of all the people who were on it. So yeah.
I'm Ryan Tuberty's wages are in the middle of it.
Well, actually, what was in the middle of this, while I have you here, this is a thank you note from Sir Lawrence Olivier, who was playing Richard III in Ardmore Studios, and he fell off a horse, and Dr. Noel O'Reilly, who was the son of the O'Reilly, and his grandson Prunchius O'Reilly gave me this to bring here today, and it was a thank you note and his remittance for his professional services to Sir Lawrence Olivier. When he fell off the horse, he hurt his shoulder and he hurt his knee, but he was an osteopath. So yeah.
Would you read out, because you don't normally see money laid out like that?
It says, I desire to enclose within here a cheque for your favour of £25, 5 shillings and 0 pence, the amount of your professional fees for the attention to Mr. Olivier. Yeah, so.
Maureen and Mary, will you tell me about the dresses on this table?
It's my mum's wedding frock. She was a tailoress and she made it herself and decorated it.
And we reckon it's 130 years old or thereabouts. And it's in perfect condition.
What was your mummy's name?
Bessie.
Elizabeth
Bessie Jones. She was O'Sullivan.
O'Sullivan, yeah.
And she was married to Ned Jones, the ploughman. So that's why that's here with this. But this is all hand done.
Would you describe it as...
It's beaded. It's actually beaded all round. And beaded flower designs on it.
But it's the colours, it's dark beads.
They're actually, I would call them kind of an anthracite colour, and it's on an ivory cotton. It would be 100% cotton.
And is it a coat on top of a skirt?
No, it's a dress. No, it's just, it's a flap across. It's like a skirt part across, just on one side.
From the waist.
From the waist down. Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's just a design on it.
One thing you mentioned Ned there a second ago.
Yes.
And about the first week you turned up with a gorgeous cup for us, but you brought loads of other ploughing photographs and certificates here. Can you tell people what they are?
They're all certificates they got for ploughing in the All-Ireland.
And this is 1931. He won that one.
That was the first one.
That was the very first one in 1931. That was the very first ever All-Ireland plough match.
Would you show people? I'd lift it up and show people. So that's the very first...
The very first certificate.
Isn't the colour amazing?
It's absolutely fantastic.
Isn't it? Look, there's so many different... And the drawing of the two horses and everything.
Yes, yeah.
Like, that's really elaborate, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is the booklet that the certificates were in. The Song of the Plough was there. And this is 1933. He won in 1933 as well. So that's 1933. He took part in 34. He didn't win it in 34. That one was in Athenry. This one was in Athy.
That was the first...
The first one was in, yes, Athy. The second one was in Dublin in 33. Athenry was in 34. Mallow was 35. Tullamore was 36. And Greystones was 37. And Carlow was 38. And that's 37 where he was the senior ploughman. And that's them all because he finished ploughing at that stage. His wife died at that stage. She died at that stage and he didn't plough anymore.
The woman who won the dress?
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
The heart went out of him, or...?
Well, there was 7 children.
So he
And the youngest was a year old. And he used to travel to Inch and get on the train in Inch. Well, first of all, he'd go to Wexford to Pearse's. He always ploughed with a Pearse's plough. The original plough, I have it. It's not here, but we have it. And they used to give him a plough for the match. He'd bring that plough down to them, but he had a way of knowing that it was his plough. He had a mark on it, that when he came back, he knew he was getting his own plough back. They would give him a plough to go and plough with. And they would get on the train and they would get to Dublin and go from a train to wherever. The horses and the plough. And himself and whoever was with him.
He'd put the horses on the train?
The horses and himself and the plough would go by train. This was back in the 30s. There was no trucks, there was no anything, you know, so they actually, most of the time they got to train at Inch Station, which is now closed.
Oh, gosh.
And it's funny, your relation here last week was on about he was bringing the Hereford Bulls from Inch Station up.
Yeah,
Dublin.
Pat Jones, yes. Yes.
And Pat said he used to walk, put him on the train here in Inch,
Yeah.
take him out then and walk him to the RDS in Dublin.
That's right, yes.
Imagine, and he said everyone from all over the country would
That's
walk bulls.
exactly the way it was
That was
done.
done in
And that way Pat's grandfather and her father were brothers. Yeah. So
what you brought along here, lads, is one of the finest piece of history. Would any of you agree? Yeah. Absolutely.
and
incredible.
they all were kept in that. So they were perfect always. You know, there was no light at them. They were never in a frame. They were always in that book. So there was no light getting at them to fade them or anything else. They were kept in that.
And can I ask you as well, when we're here, the cup that's on the table, where did that come from?
That's one of the cups that he won.
He won. One of the-
Because there's a picture there, that was the men of the NPA men in 1937, and that was the last year he ploughed, and that's him holding the 2 cups. That was the team cup and the All-Ireland Cup that he won, the senior.
And then your poor mammy passed away,
Yes.
That's right, in 39.
and he had to wear the 70s
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. And he didn't plough after that.
Ah, the poor one.
Yeah. So
Well,
that was it.
He's thinking of you today. He's here with us today,
Thank you.
for sure.
And you inherited her style. The 2E.
Peader Mordaunt. Will you show me that bottle you have there?
Oh, this fella. There's no behind us.
Will you turn around and show the people here what that is? And will you tell them what it was used for?
It was used years and years ago for when people, a man and woman, they get married, or boy and girl, or whatever, like, you know. And when they come home, they wouldn't be going away on honeymoon or anything that time, you know. And when they come back, there'll be a crowd of boys from wherever going. They'd have these bottles with no bomb in it, and they'd blow them for two. They'd come at night time, you know, black dark.
On the honeymoon night?
On the honeymoon night. It didn't matter what night.
On the wedding night?
Yeah. And they'd blow them for 3 or 4 nights in a row. And could go on for a week if they didn't like him.
Just annoying the couple.
Oh, just, yeah.
God, when she bowled.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know. I'm not old enough to, but I remember all the people talking about it.
So it has no base on it?
No, there's no base on it, no.
And show us how it works. Can you show us how it works?
I wouldn't be able to blow it, to be honest.
Okay.
There was a man here today, but we was able to blow it all right. Paddy, was it? Here you are, Paddy.
You were one of the boat straps that was annoying the wedding couple, were you?
No, I mightn't be able to blow it. So I'm not able to blow
Like a
it.
trumpet.
Yeah, but
You've gone practice now.
I'm missing 2 teeth for that.
Next year.
Can I tell one thing? Sorry, Ronan. One thing, Peader. This was done for those who don't know, this was done all over County Wexford. And they went by the blowers, the horners. Out in Ballygard, where I grew up, they were known as the Cruelty Gang, right? And would you tell us, Peader, how they used to break the bottom out of that?
They put boiling water into it. And if it didn't, they'd fill up to about there with boiling water. And it'd just crack around. And if it didn't crack, you boil the kettle again and you make it really hot and she'd pop and blow over. And crack, as you crack around there, because the water wouldn't have you only put enough water up there and then you pour it into it, because I tried it one time. Yeah.
Did you use that, Peader?
I didn't, well, no, I'm not that old.
Jimmy, there's a few things you brought this week that we didn't see before.
Yes.
And I noticed one lovely little book, and I noticed Paddy Doyle has written on it.
That's my uncle.
That's your uncle. Will you show me that book?
That book is here, and back in, I suppose, maybe 50s, 40s, along that era that there was a book brought out, and it was called the Catholic Handbook for Irish men and women going to England. And it was all on instructions on how to be a good Catholic when you went across the water to live in England. There's different aspects here. The average Englishman, religion in England. It's an unusual little booklet because there wouldn't be many books today written up now and advising people when they go and leave the country how to be a good Catholic.
And what are they advising? What are they saying?
I never read it.
So you've led a life of sin since.
No, I stayed at home.
Well, there was no temptation in Wexford.
Yeah, no. We're down that road. Have been down that road.
So this woman here came up from Roscommon chasing men. She told me this Carmel Teresa. You said you came down from Roscommon chasing men. You got a job as a teacher.
Now, just reading what's in the book now. This is just a little paragraph. It says you already know that English people who are not Catholics will ask you many questions about their religion, and you know also that it is not a good thing to argue with them anyway, and that often they are only trying to ridicule you. Now, those are not my words, this is what's in the book. surely it says it does not matter which church you belong to, and if God has founded one church for everyone, it doesn't matter. Once a man begins to wonder whether God has founded such a church, he is bound to examine the Catholic Church to see if it is founded by God for all men. But there's lots of bits and pieces in it, but it was advice, I suppose, so that you wouldn't lose your religion when you go across the water. Was that because there'd be lads, they'd be working on the building sites, and so there were, the Irish built England, if you want to put it, built London, and then sure there was the pubs and the clubs and all, and the places, the dance halls, and the religion might be forgot about.
They'd be taking the Lord's name, but it wouldn't be in prayer.
It wouldn't be in prayer, no, definitely not. It'd be different. But that book came out here by the Catholic religion here for the advice.
Jimmy,
people.
can I ask you? I'm looking at the lovely lights here.
Yeah,
They belong to you.
They're mine. Yeah.
Will you hold them up and let people look at the lights? Because we all have got so many lights now on our mobile phones.
That's a flash lamp for a bicycle, and you had this part here slid down on the little bracket on the front of the bicycle in the middle of the handlebars, and you had your battery in it, and obviously then you switch them on when you needed it. This was a kind of a flash lamp, Pifco. It's brand new in the box, in the packet still, but now that's fair, wouldn't be that old. But it's you wouldn't be getting them now, it wouldn't be.
Show me that one there, Jimmy.
And that little one there had a flat battery in it. Sorry.
Straight away I've been brought back to 1980s, and I remember one of them at home.
Yeah.
Remember them, do you? Yeah. And can you get those flat batteries anymore, I wonder?
I might have one at home, but obviously it's no good, but I don't know if you can. Can you? Yeah. But there's lots of bits and pieces there. There's a thing I came across one time, not too long ago, in Blackwater furniture sales. Anyone knows where that is? Dempsey's. And that little thing, I got that, and I thought it was actually a weapon of some sort that you put on your finger with a ring and you'd stab someone with it. But when I went home, I was told that was a seal. That when you melt the wax for the sealing envelope, and you press that, put down the drop of heated wax and press that into it, and that was your seal of office, if you want to call it that. And there was a little ship there, a schooner or whatever it was, and that was pressed into the hot wax. And also it had another job for anyone that was smoking a pipe. That was used to tamp the tobacco into the pipe. So it had two functions.
There's a little joke, Jimmy. I won't let the table go. There's so much stuff here you could spend.
Yeah.
But I noticed there's one thing here, a rocket.
Oh, the rocket, yes.
Now, and I think the man behind you owned it, as they said, that rocket.
Yes.
Denny Hanlon, come up here with you.
No.
No.
I'm sorry, Denny.
You regret telling me anything?
Yeah. You filled it with water, Michael, and then you poured in there and you pumped it, pressurised it, and you let it off and it went up the sky. Then when it came back down, it was spread out the water as it went up.
Was that yours, Denny?
It was. I got it from Santi one time.
That's not today nor yesterday.
Not today or yesterday.
What? Last year.
Well, so would it be? Yeah.
There's a lot of water going down the sliding things.
Did it work well? Was
I
it
did, yeah.
brilliant.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Absolutely
I
brilliant.
go up far, Jimmy, 100 feet.
Oh,
would it?
well, yeah,
Maybe more.
You want to be standing away from the...
You'd be drowned with the water.
Drowned with water. When it
coming
was
down
going
now.
up. Great job for the summer.
God, Santi did well, didn't he?
He
He
did.
did. He did.
You must have been very good that year, Ian.
He was way before his time, wasn't he?
He was actually.
The only time he was good.
Brilliant. Listen, lads, Jimmy, thanks for showing it. Is there anything else you want to show us before we let you go?
Just that little thing there. See that little thing?
The coffin.
The what?
Show the coffin.
Oh, the coffin. Yeah, this is I'll show you these two yokes and then there's a whole lot of yokes. There's Roy Rogers.
Now, where,
And
can
Trigger.
I ask you, where... Now,
That's Roy Rogers and Trigger. And Roy Rogers and Trigger came, I saw it on the internet. I saw it somewhere in another man's house, one similar to this. And I said, I looked it up then, and I said I wanted to buy one. And I looked on eBay and different places, and I found this one, and it happened to be in Orlando in Florida. And it was €35 for the price of it. That was fine, there was no problem with that, but they wanted €50 then for the post it. Brutal stuff. But anyway, that is costing me a good few bob. Well, it don't matter, I wanted it, so.
And all Denny had to do was be good and write the sanity.
Yeah,
You got a toy.
no, I wasn't that privileged. Now we'll show you this show. This is called a coffin bank. And this lad, the bit of history to that is that I was in the fair day in Boris one year, and all the travellers have all their stuff down along the street on each side, and they'd have everything be on the road and whatever. And this little thing happened to be in it, and I saw it from a distance actually. And I went over and I asked the guy how much he wanted for it. No, I didn't, I beg your pardon. I asked him about something that was beside it. And I asked, how much was that? And he said €2. And says, how much do you want that, or will you throw it in? And he says, I'll throw it in. He said, bring it home with you. That's all I want. Didn't care about the other yoke. And I brought it home. Now, the bit of cloth material was wrapped up in the mechanism, right? So what you do is, you put your coin here, and then it goes like that. And you drag in money there as fast as you like. Now, more money you have, the better.
The tax man, is it?
Yeah,
Or the Minister for Finance, is
Minister for Finance and Minister for Hardship as well.
Great.
So that's that was Pinocchio. Walt Disney made a film in 1939 about Pinocchio, and Pinocchio was big in Italy, and we were on holidays, and Bendis went into an antique shop and bought this lad for €20. He's over 80 years of age now, that full long time.
thanks, Jimmy.
Okay, thank you.
Kilkenny man sitting over there. And lads, to the shame of Wexford, a Kilkenny man brought a hurl along. We didn't bring one along. So, will you come up and show us this hurl? Over that. I hope this hurl will bring back memories, lads. Not for all the games we lost to Kilkenny, but more so the shape of the hurl and also how it was fixed. Will you tell us about this hurl?
The hurl was acquired from no less a man than Ollie Walsh in about early 1970s. A few of us, when we came to Dublin at first, would go out on a Sunday morning and hurl around with the ball, maybe in a local park, and would be joined by others who would want to join in, but maybe wouldn't have hurlers. So I took it upon myself to sort that out, and I said I would give Ollie a ring, which I did, and told him what it was about. Within a week or so, I would say, I had a half a dozen hurlers in the post from Ollie. And when I went to pay his bill, he said, no charge, it's for a good cause. You're hurling around and enjoying yourselves. And that's how that hurling came about. But notably, if anybody had a close-up look at it, today we're aware that there's a scarcity of ash, and the grain oftentimes isn't running as it should be from top down to the toe of the hurley. But this one, as you can see, the grain is continuous and curves around the heel, and that was a mark of craftsmanship to produce a hurley with that grain through from top to bottom. Also, anybody, I suppose today watching even television will see that the shape of the hurley has changed. This one had more, in those years, it had more of a curve on the bottom of it, and the boss wasn't as broad. So, this has taken a bit of a battering and been fixed, but that's it. Ollie's hurley, woodworm and all.
Lovely. Thanks a million. Thanks for that. John, what do you have?
I have drums and the staff from the pipe band in Kilanerin.
And you've got a photograph as well.
Yeah, there's photographs there of that's the original photograph.
Would you hold it up and let people see it for those who haven't seen it? What year's on that, John, in the back?
Oh, on the back of this one. There's nothing on that one. There's 1904 on that one.
1904 that photograph is, lads. That's incredible. And the big drum, tell us about that.
It's hanging up in the shed for as long as I know. Anyhow, I'm 48 years of age now, and it's just took it down last week. So luckily we didn't burst the skins of that one. We bursted the skins of the small one with the hurls. So we did. So
the way he described it to me, that they sound like they were rough chaps when they were younger.
Well, when they were told not to touch, you get touched.
But actually, the big drum's a great order.
It's not too bad. It just needs to be put back together a little. But
and does anyone locally here want to jump in? Do you know much about the pipe band? Or it's a fife and drum band, wasn't it? Peter, what do you hear about it?
I just know from the book there, Michael, there's the history book that was published in 1986 here. There's a description of the band.
Yeah.
So the first band, I think, was 1902, which is this one here. So, and that's John's house there in the background that he grew up in. Just there. Yeah. So the house is not there any longer. This is in the old school in Kilanerin. So and John Gethings' house was just behind the hedge is still there. So so it's the same drum and the same the mace as well, or the staff as well. So and this is Master Kennedy here. He was the instructor, if you like, this man. So and that's my grandfather there as well. That man there. So. There's a few other people that people would know. Jim Kilty, that some people would know from the shop, had a shop up in the village in the 60s. That's Jim there in the 1902 photograph, and he's in the revival in 1938. He's still there. There he is again. So people would remember him from the 60s and 70s. So that's just some of the background to it, Michael. Yeah.
And it would have revived. 38 was one of the commemorations.
It was
98.
40 years after 98, yeah. And then I think it was on the go for 5 or 6 years after that, and they went around to the various commemorations around Wexford at that time, and then it disbanded again. And it was John's granduncle Jim Doyle was in the 1938 band, and Jim lived in that house as well, and it was obviously put up in the roof of the shed, and it's been there ever since. So it goes back to 1902. So it's 125 years old anyway. This, the drums and the mace. So it's got a long history. So yeah.
Thanks a million for that. Thanks, John, for that. Brilliant, lovely. And when I have Peter O'Connor here, you brought along a few bits, Peter. Can you tell us what you have?
I did, Michael. Yeah, and I'm not a collector. These are tools that were in my father's workshop down in Burley. So and when I moved out of the house, and the current chairman down there is now living in that house, and I had to move out quickly. He insisted. No, I'm joking. But these were the tools that were left there, and I brought them with me. So I just kind of scrubbed them up quickly. There's just a selection here, but basically they were carpenters and general tradesmen. And this, I suppose, it's not for the standard of the work. This is a model of a wheelbarrow that they would have made. My uncle Johnny O'Connor lived over across the road here, and this is an actual wheel from one of those wheelbarrows. So again, they were solid. I remember the weight of them was something else, you know. This, even when they were empty, they were, you know, so if it was full of dung or something, then you had to carry it up the plot.
And they were made locally for people.
Oh, these are made in the shed, you know, at home. So this was it. And sorry, that's the ladder. There is another example. That's just cut from, say, a large pole split down the centre, and it's just the rungs are made. They're using the spoke shave, and it's just put together then with wedges. There's no screws or anything in it, you know. So it's they made these. This is the best photograph I had. They made these horses' carts. So this is a spring car that. They would have made back in the 60s and 70s for farmers, and then in the 70s it kind of died out. Everybody was getting mechanised, and the only people buying them at that stage were the travellers, you know. And
can you let people see that, Peter? Look.
Yeah.
And there's a little stool and all of it.
Well, that's just put in there, I think, by chance, really. Sorry, here, yeah. Well, the stools again. That's all that stuff would have been made locally in farms and.
Sorry, Peter. Sorry. Remember the farm? Sorry, Michael. There are farms here in this hall. There's about 7 or 8 of them that Peter's father made for this hall, and the hall will be 100 years old now in 1929.
Well, my grandfather actually.
Your grandfather made
Carmel, yes, but the same style. So it was all this, like there was armchairs at home that they would have made themselves, you know, out of timber, and my mother would have upholstered it then with cloth, you know. So I suppose the point is that, and there's a dresser. You're probably interested. That's my grandfather made that. I know you're interested in dressers and all that. But I suppose the point of it is that it was all hand tools. This is before, before electricity even, you know. So there's none of the mechanised tools you have today. And these are some planes here for doing molds. You see the different patterns. So if you wanted to do a picture frame or an architrave or something like that, you had the different planes for doing that. And these are for mortising the scribes. You know, when you're making gates and whatever, where you want to mortise out with the hand chisels. This is all. So I remember all this work going on in the 60s. I grew up, born in 1957, so I remember the 60s. This work was still going on. All these tools have been used, you know. And then obviously there's a big change from the 70s. All the stuff became, say power tools and everything else came in. So it's really just, it was a different, the timber was cut locally. My uncle had a saw bench across the road here. He planked the timber and it was brought down home, and it would have been sawed up by hand and made whatever the carts or the gates or the trucks or whatever it was. So there's people talking now about the circular economy and sustainability and everything, and this was 100%, there was no air miles or, CO2 generated, anything like that. So it's just a different time. So that's the story of the tools.
Brilliant. And can I ask you, Peter, he himself made that as a little, that was made by his own hand?
Yeah, that's a model. Johnny made that, yeah. He used to make a lot of these and give them out to us for souvenirs, But it's an exact replica of the wooden Peterborough, So.
What year was that? Did he make that? Do you know?
He died 87, so in the kind of early 80s, I'd say. Yeah. So.
And for my own interest, did he make many dressers?
He did. Yeah, he made this one and probably a lot more. There's another one over in Ayrton's house, which I think you've seen over in the Barnland, which he made. So it was what they did. They did general building work and carpentry and so on, and would have made those on site really. They were manufactured. I have this one at home myself. It's a project. I'm at some stage going to restore it. Hopefully, to get around to it. So, but yeah, it's just a different era. Just the way things were made and sourced, and then they were repaired and fixed and so on, and kept in use. So.
Listen, thanks a million for bringing those.
And sorry, the only other thing I have here is that this is a set of Arklow pottery that was a wedding present for my mother and father back in 1956. And again, it's not, it's not valuable or anything like that, but it's a kind of a complete set. But Arklow pottery, just locally, people would remember, was a big employer. Started in the 30s and ran through right up until the end of the 80s. Well, Noritaki took it over for about 20 years, but. It was a big employer locally. People here would have cycled to Inch, and there was a bus. Buses came from all over the place to Arklow back in the 70s. It was a big industrial town between the pottery and the Fert and the mines and the air gas. So there was, people travelled from North Wexford and South Wicklow to Arklow to work in places like the pottery. And that's just a set of it that was a wedding present, and it was, at home, and I just kept it as a keepsake as well. So
Lovely. 1956 it says.
1956 was their wedding. Yeah. So. It's the
And so many people would have had sets from Marco as wedding presents all over
Oh
Ireland.
yeah. No, it was all over the country. Yeah, and I think it was even exported as well. So, yeah, and it was just one of these local industries that was set up by the new government back in the 1930s, to provide employment. And they brought over potters from Staffordshire, to teach them how to do it and all that, and set it up. And it ran for 60 years nearly. Yeah. So. But just local employment, and lots of people would have had these in their houses. So.
Lovely, thanks a million for
okay.
that. Brilliant,
Thank
thanks
you.
Yeah.
Paddy, what did you bring today?
This is a photograph of Clough Village, if anyone ever knew it. And that is the end of the old post office there still. And these houses were there, and my father was reared up in one of the houses. And these is a group of men that lived in them, and they're playing taws on the road, and there's the taws that they were using back that time. And them houses were knocked down in the early 50s, and there was another set of houses built up on Money Cross Road on the way to Gorey, half a mile up the road, and they were built in 1949. So that's it. And my grandfather and my grandfather and my great grandfather's in it, and Johnny Hemp that used to own the garage in the village as in the photograph as well.
Will you show people the photograph, Paddy? Hold it up there.
Yeah.
So people can see.
And when my son was born, I had to bring my son down to see the postmistress, Miss Sarah Hemp, in the post office in Clough, because my lad was the 7th Paddy Kinsella of Clough that she knew. My name was Paddy as well. My father was Patsy Kinsella.
Brilliant. And for those who don't know Paddy, will you take the taws out into the hands there and show people? I rephrase that.
The meadow clay. Yeah. The meadow clay. Them ones is called bombers. And it says when they used to be playing, if you smashed one of these ones into the last ones would burst open, break them. So the rest through, I don't know.
Would you describe to people who've never heard of playing with marbles before how it went?
Well, they had one out a few yards. It was a bit like horse shows. You had one down, you threw one down there first, and then you had to flick these off your thumb, and whoever got nearest to it or hit it was the winners. It was the same as horse shows. You'd throw 4 horse shows, and whoever scored the most then at the end was the same with the taws.
And how many taws would each?
I've no idea.
And you'd roll them or flick them?
Yeah, no, you let them off your thumb that way. You just let them off that way.
Sorry, Michael. There was another way with taws, that there was a ring drawn, and everybody put in 3 or 4 rings, and you each got a shot then, and as many as you could knock out. If you knocked out the other person's marble taws, you got to keep them. So that was another version of it.
There's another version with 3 holes.
Here we go.
Go on, Denny. How did that go?
There was a certain distance between the holes. The holes were about that size. I can't really remember. And there was about probably about 10 feet between the holes. And you started off, and you started the first hole, and you had to put down your hand and put a mark out. Then you could fire from the mark. Every time you went into a hole, you could fire on to the next one. Yeah. Span, yeah.
Isn't it mad when you think about it?
There's three above in the floor in the ball alley in Kilmichael.
Still?
In back, yeah. And the things were done with steel, or about that size. And the ball alley was built in 1925.
So I'll see them someday with you. But isn't it amazing when you think about it? These little balls were the entertainment people had back years ago. Now we've everything and we're bored, and people only had them and were able to entertain themselves and keep themselves going. So that's lovely, Paddy. Now, tell me about this photograph.
This photograph is my aunt. She was a parcel of Frankfurt, and my grandfather was a Kinsella, a Clough, a half a mile down the road. And my grandmother worked with De Valera in Dublin. And back in back at what am I talking about? Back in 1920 and 21 too, she worked with him. And she got married either 23 or 24. My father was the oldest after I got married, and he would have been 100 last February if he had been alive. But there was something else we were going to say. But, oh yeah, my grandfather was a blacksmith, but when they got married, he went to Dublin and he worked with a man, a silversmith. So he come back then and they got a house in Bantown instead of the houses down there. They got their house in Bantown about 1.5 miles up the road. So he went to work in Pierce's. He was blacksmith. He went to work in Pierce's in Wexford, and he died when he was in 1949. He was 45 when he died.
So Eamon de Valera.
Yeah. So Eamon de Valera presented that to them for their wedding, as a wedding gift.
In 1923.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Listen, Paddy, thanks a million for bringing those along.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Well, I'm Mary Darcy. I was Mary Bushe, and I went to school here. I was born and raised in Kilanerin, and I went to school here next door. And Joss Kilty was the teacher next door, and Joss taught me and an awful lot of people around here. But he was actually an artist, and when we were children, he had a little sports car. And I have 2 sisters, Liz and Carmel, and there was 2 Redmonds as well. And he used to bring us down. He had a mobile home below in Clone, and he used to bring us down during the summer on the weekends to clean the mobile home, and he'd go off painting. But he painted all his life, and he taught us to paint. And he actually taught here up until the mid-70s when he retired, and then he became a priest. And he was ordained a priest as a late vocation. He was ordained in 78, and he died in 1988 at 75 years of age. And these are 2 of his paintings. And this one is Burnham Wood. It's actually England. It's where Macbeth was based, Shakespeare. And this one is Dooneen Beach in Cork. And they're 2 of his paintings. And I bought them here at an auction, back, I don't know how many years ago, for €10 for the 2 of them.
And where's the man buried?
He's buried in the churchyard here in Kilanerin. He actually worked here in the school, and he lived up in the village, just above the Jim Kilty that's in that picture would have been his father. So he lived just above the church in the cottage up there. So they're his, and I just thought, because it's so local, I just thought they needed to be seen.
Lovely, great, thanks for bringing them.
They're them.
What else did you bring?
So now, what I have here is hurling memorabilia, and it was actually given to me by my uncle, who died 30 odd years ago, and it has been in a drawer until today. I have to tell you the truth, I didn't even know what was in it. So what's here is, that's a picture of the Wexford All-Ireland 1955 hurling champions. That's in it. That's the 1960 team, and that's the Tipperary runners-up, and they're all autographed. They would have all just came in the paper. They're not. They're generic ones that were in the paper. This is a badge that they would have worn in 1962. That was the Wexford supporters badge from 1962. This is the 68 team, the hurling champions. And this badge is, I don't know what year it is, it could have been 68, but it's actually blue, it's not purple. And no light has been at these, because they've literally been, I didn't even know the badges were in until I took them out this morning. So that'll tell you. This here is, I've been informed, is 1934. It's the half centenary of the GAA. And this is the condition I got it in. It hasn't been touched, and it's actually fragile. But it has all the dates, the venues of the matches, the scores, and everything for the football and the hurling. And I was just looking, Wexford played in the final in 1893 in the football, and they actually won. They were the Young Irelands, and it was 1 goal and 1 point was the score. And they were against Cork, and Cork scored 1 point, and the match was unfinished. Yeah.
What year was that again?
1893.
Now, Brian Cleary, I see you here. Was that due to the row over the North Corks?
No, it's actually a different match.
Yeah.
This was a football match.
Yeah.
This was football.
Yeah.
Now, there's a hurling match here, 1893. That was Cork and Kilkenny. Oh no, sorry. It was Dublin withdrew after 50 minutes. Was that the one? That's 1952. Cork played Dublin.
But when I have you here, when we won't let this skip.
No, that's all right.
That's lovely. We'll come back to you in a second.
Yeah.
Brian, do you want to tell the people here about that? What happened at that match?
There's a song about it. Simmy Donoghue used to sing it. John might know the words. There's a line in it. Mike Parker and one of the Nevilles, they began to think of Tom the Devil and his something and crew. And as they taught in 98, they were actually winning. They had the higher score, the Wexford team, but they left the field and Cork were awarded the match. That was the Ahabelow Blackwater Castlebridge hurling team. You see Mike Parker buried at the end of the church in Castlebridge. He was the captain. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, the North Corks left an awful reputation in Wexford, especially in Owlers. Well, we left an impression on them too, I think, in Owlers. And that memory carried on to the match 100 years later. And the match was called off, Brian, is that right?
The Wexford team left the field and Cork were awarded the match. I might have it wrong.
Yeah.
Someone here might be able to sing it.
Yeah.
But it's a lovely song.
Yeah. And there's a mention in it of a fella, and Owen Dunbar will know that man, Tom the Devil.
I think the actual words on that, Brian, were when they thought of Tom the Devil with his pitch cap and shears. Because Tom the Devil was a man called Drum Sergeant Thomas Homan of the North Cork Militia, and he actually pitch capped our man here in Perrymount, Anthony Perry, in the market house in Gorey. And the idea was that there was boiled up tar, and the tar was pitched onto the head, and sometimes it ran down the face of the person. But even with the shears, he could snip a piece off your nose or off your ears. So and that was being done. That he was never forgotten. Tom the Devil.
So that's how you remember. Sorry, I'm going back to yourself now.
No, that's okay.
Your football memorabilia sparked that conversation, but that's okay though, too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's okay. Tell what else have you got here?
This here is. They're the pieces, they're Nicky Rackard Remembers, they're his story, and they're all from 96, and they're all taken out of the Irish press, and they're dated in 1956. I haven't read them, they were actually rolled up, as you can see. I've been trying to unravel them.
Would you do me a favour and hold up just one of them so we can see that?
Absolutely.
Isn't that incredible? We have an archive. Someone's went through the paper and collected every Nicky Rackard little story.
Well, that was my uncle who had all them, and he gave them all to me.
No, you have them.
Never have them.
What was your uncle's name?
Pat Jones.
Pat Jones.
Yeah, he was her brother.
I have to wait.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous. What else do you have before we go away for the day?
Well, the rest, it's all to do with hurling. And it's all bits that he collected. Everything that's here, he collected. That was the piece from the paper. That's the page from the Independent in 1960 for the champions. And we were just looking at some of the stories. And this is Wexford Achievement on the 5th of September 1960. That's the full page that was given to it.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, so.
Brilliant.
That's all I have. And there's one of them is the Tipperary team, as I said. They're there, the runners up. That's all of those.
Thanks a minute for bringing those.
Not at all. You're welcome. I didn't even know whether they'd be relevant, but I said here I'd bring them anyway.
Lovely. Jimmy and Denny, what did you bring? What did you bring along here at all? You'd like to show me?
This is all Jimmy stuff. No, Jimmy will tell you.
No.
This is a vegetable chopper.
What's that, Jimmy?
A vegetable chopper. Back in the 1800s. The book here for fluid. Not yours, not right. Catch it there. Okay, getting away on me.
You look like a fellow who didn't use that very often.
The first 20 years, the worst.
Yeah. What do you have in your hand, Denny?
It's a daisy lifter. That's what it was called, for lifting daisies out of lawns or out of gardens or something. That's actually what it is, a daisy lifter.
Would you show people how up there? So it's got a little lever, a little round, so it levers up to pull the daisy out.
I had Googled it, Michael, and that's what it came up as.
Yeah.
Is it?
If you could find something like that for lifting buckalons out of a field now, wouldn't you be right one, wouldn't you? Yeah. What's that?
And that's known as a cobbler's bunion pliers. For anybody that had bunions years ago, the cobbler would take off the boot or the shoe, and he'd put that into the shoe and press out the leather wherever the bunion was, so as the leather wouldn't be resting on the bunion. Ever hear tell of anybody with bunions today, would you, Jimmy?
Not very much anyway.
No.
No.
That's what it was, a cobbler's bunion pliers.
Go away or that.
That's for spraying vegetables.
You put it in there, you put the powder in there. Then you put cabbage or for green fly or whatever was on flowers, or green fly on cabbage or flowers or whatever. And it came out there as powder. Yeah.
What else have you got, lads?
That's I have to look at it. Do you know what it is? Crimper, yeah. Crimper for crimping. Was it Jimmy Murphy there now would know more about this than I would. Jimmy will tell you there, Michael.
Jimmy, what to show us here?
I was used in a laundry, I think, in a convent when the nuns used to do washing clothes and all that for the local community. I think now that could be the case. And collars were separate to the shirts, and all the collars had to be crimped after being washed and so on. So that's what that was used for, to crimp collars of shirts.
And you can adjust it here, Michael, they say. You can adjust that there and let it up. And see, it opens the distance here, see? Same for there. And I don't know what the idea of those are. Jimmy, the idea of those.
Sorry?
You heat them, is it? You heat them.
I think so. They were like elements.
Elements, was it? You heated them and put them in.
And put them in.
Right.
Isn't it amazing sometimes that these things you have loads of people when they get their heads together, they all figure out what it's for. And that's what's lovely about it. What are you holding in your hand, eh?
I'm holding a Thatcher's needle.
Will you show the people there who can't see that what that is?
Bad hand.
Yeah.
Okay, Jimmy.
I've no power in this hand.
And how would that work? Can you tell me, man?
I don't know how it worked, but that's went out there. What it did no after that?
Thatcher's needle. Brilliant.
John Dempsey might know, do you, John? How did it work?
I don't know.
Yeah.
One piece went around the back for the bundles, and then the other one caught the twine.
And pulled it down. Yeah. Come here, what are you holding in your hand? We'll get out.
A floor cutter, a board cutter. You put your foot into.
Again, show the people that might be interested in that tool.
That you know.
So you'd stand on this yoke and then
same way for the gaps in the boards on the floor, Michael, same way. You put it down like that and then you put the same gap in all, and then the board went tighter together. See the gap there and there's no gap over there.
Yeah.
So I just could just go together.
Brilliant.
Same way.
And show me one more thing, men, before I let you go. What else do you have there?
That's this fella, Michael.
Coffee grinder, is it?
A coffee grinder's right, yeah. Put in the coffee there and it came out there. Took it out in the drawer. The 1865 was on that there.
And can I ask you, lads, where did you get this from?
Jimmy has a collection.
I got that in a lucky bag of a thing at an auction. That we had it.
That's for picking up hot coals. For picking hot coals. That's why it says a hot coal tongs. It's what came up when we googled it. And it's for picking up hot coals, probably for putting on the lids of probably baked pans or something back. That's the stuff that Jimmy has told me.
And just in case you can't see it here yourselves, that Jimmy brought along photographs of what his hay sheds look like. And they're packed to the gills, to the rafters, with stuff. So that's lovely. And I hope the people who came along could see some of them objects and spark a few memories and get people thinking. So thanks for bringing them along, Jimmy. Thanks, Denny, for that. I appreciate that. Brilliant. Mick, what did you bring?
As timber dibbler for sowing, when you're sowing mango seed or turnip seed or beet seed, you just drop that on top of the drill and make the little holes. Someone else coming behind you and dropping in the seed and covering it. And I've seen that being done, actually. And I'm not old. So that's exactly what it's for. You moved along and made the holes and just press it down. You know, at the top of a drill will be nice and soft. And you cover the seed then by hand. And that's as simple as that. Wait for them to come up.
What's it called?
A dibbler.
A dibbler?
Yeah.
A dibbler. I'd never seen a dibbler or heard of a dibbler before in my life.
Well, there you are now.
Tell me that.
Yeah.
And who owns that, Mick?
I own it, yeah.
And did you make it or did you?
Well, I had the original, but if you caught it that way, the handles would come off of it. I have it still, but I had to make.
Way.
Yeah, exactly.
A dibbler.
Identical to that, that's what it is, yeah. No.
Thanks, Mick.
No bother.
Good man. Good. Sean, what did you bring?
I brought a corker from the old pub in Ballycanoe. It was the family pub back in, I think it stopped trade around the late 80s, mid 80s. And a few of the old boxes that say MJ O'Brien, Ballycanoe, and even in it, we found in the storehouse a few years ago. They were in the storehouse next to Goslin's until a couple of years ago. The uncorked, capped caps for the beer, and you can see they have a cork on the inside and rather than plastic, so we've been used to these days. There's a couple 100,000 of them there. But so that's what I brought there today.
And that's the O'Brien's pub in Kilanerin, or not Kilanerin, in Ballycanoe.
They were the same. They were the same family.
Same family.
It would have been a great aunt of mine that had the pub in Ballycanoe, and then it would have been, of course, my grandparents that would have had the pub in. Ballycanoe one was my grandparents, and then the one in Kilanerin was my great aunt. So we still have the storehouse across the road from it. It's now One for the Road is the name of the pub now, but it was across the way was the storehouse, and where Ballycanoe Court, the estate would have been the farmyard, because of course there were farmers as well, and the place was more than a pub. It was a grocer. It was sold machinery, it sold grain, it sold seed, it sold everything, fertilizer and your butter. And I have a few more things like butter churns and oil cans and such from it. Well, there's a few things survived from it anyway.
And for those of us who don't know, years ago the stout was bottled in the premises.
Yeah, so this yoke, and it was a kind man over somewhere from here, from Gorey, that was here today, and he showed me how what it was. There's a mechanism here, and it compresses it as it goes down, and then pushes it down into the bottle that'd be sitting on the press here. And my Aunt Kay would have been the last person to use this. There was all lead windows. We still have that. Would have been on the bottle and room back at the storehouse, and we would have come in casks, so to say, and the lads used to bottle themselves and stick on the labels themselves, because they didn't just come in bottles pre-bottled. There was no fridges, so that was the idea of it. But I think they stopped letting them do that in the 90s or so, when they just wanted a more uniformed quality control from the manufacturers, so the manufacturers started doing it themselves.
And did the people here in the audience, the older people, remember the bottled stout people bottling it years ago? You would, yeah. Yeah. And you've got O'Brien's is on the boxes as well.
Yeah, MJ O'Brien Ballycanoe is on the boxes.
Yeah.
And by the way, that storehouse you were talking about across the street.
Yeah.
That was used in our day when we were going to school as the concert hall every year.
Yes.
The school hall has had the concerts in it.
Thanks for that, because I've also heard that there was boxing matches held in it as well, by the parish priest. That's it. The parish priest used to run boxing matches in the storehouse and such.
My late father took part in the boxing under Father Staples.
Aye.
With he boxed a fellow by the name of Quigley. I think his name was Michael Quigley.
And the only thing it's used for nowadays is it's used as Santa's grotto at Christmas time. But yeah.
Brilliant. And do you have any labels at all? No, the paper labels. Have you seen those?
No, there was no paper labels left in the storehouse now. I think anything that was left in the storehouse was moved from the farmyard when the estate was built back during the boom into the storehouse. So there's a few scales and weights and stuff like that, and bags and such left over, but nothing paper left over. So.
But the legacy of the large bottle still survives in Wexford, doesn't it? Still know a lot of people who, the glass, the 1.5 pint glass.
No, New Ross.
In New Ross?
New Ross.
Yeah, all right.
Shield large bottles.
Yeah. Here's a tradition in Ballycanoe and Ballygarrett. You maybe heard of it. The old lads in Ballygarrett, when they be getting when they be getting a large bottle, 1/2 pint glass, just always sprinkle black pepper on top of it.
I heard of it, but only from you.
Yeah. They did it, and I heard the lads in Ballycanoe doing it as well, yeah.
Aye.
Yeah. Again.
I may ask around about it.
Yeah.
No, my father was about, I think he was 11 or 12 when the pub closed. He was the youngest of 8. But so I don't know if he'd know, but my aunts surely will, that they were the last people to use this stuff back when the pub was running. That was their summer job, I suppose.
It's a gorgeous object as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Listen, thanks a million for bringing those along, Sean.
Very much.
I really appreciate it. Good lad. Thank you. Now, Mr. Earle, what did you bring?
What do you want to see first?
Will you show me that accordion?
Yeah. That one here. It's not looking on, but it is a little bit of loving care, that's all. Whatever you do, it's supposed to want us to.
This accordion caught my eye because I tell you why it caught my eye, because Steve has a photograph of the person who owned it playing it, and it's unusual to get a photograph with someone actually with the accordion. So who can you show me the photograph, Steve, and tell me who the woman was?
There's the woman there. I had to write it down. This lady here will tell you who she is.
Come over here and tell me.
Lucy Lacey. She's living in Gorey now. She did live out in Cullentra. And I just spotted it there on the table, and I was telling this man that I know that woman.
Cool.
She's living in Gorey with her daughter now, I think. Her daughter lived out near Ballycale as well. Yeah.
And is it the same woman in the photograph?
Yeah.
That woman then would be of some age, wouldn't she?
No, she's, I suppose, well, now she doesn't look at it. She's, I don't know, would she be 80s, in her 80s? Late 80s, maybe?
Yeah, that photograph was taken around 1954.
Yeah.
That's what
She was 18 there, it said.
And the accordion was bought.
Did it?
And the accordion was bought in the music shop near where Penny's in Wexford town.
Would it have been unusual in that age for a woman to play an accordion?
Yeah, around 1954 they say that was, and she was only 18 at that stage. Now that I do think of it.
And when we consider the Fla now and in Wexford town over the next couple of months, which is fantastic, and it's always lovely to get a photograph of an old musician, an older player playing.
That's right.
In the archives, Steve, do me a favour, go on.
His typewriter came in the same moment. She gave me those 2 items back about 10 or 15 years ago. That's how I located them.
Will you spark some memories with people, Steve, and maybe talk about those pots that the travelling man made for you?
Oh yeah. This is the old stuff that I had years ago. This was for the lamp oil, I think.
Will you hold it up, Steve, so people can see?
Yeah.
So, again, my ignorance, I'm not of that age, that was for putting lamp oil in?
Yeah, for the lamps, for the tilly lamps in them days.
And was that made by Travelling Tinsmiths?
Oh, that was Travelling job as well, yeah. All of this stuff, as I mentioned, made in Travellers. This one here was, I believe, a tea candy for putting the tea in before the tea bags came out. You bought the tea loose. I'm led to believe that that's what that was for.
Again, handmade by Travelling man.
Oh yeah, all that. And that was it could have been a milk can or a sweet can. Now I'm not quite sure which. And this one here was for, it says on here, Best Irish, £7 of best Irish preserves. Maybe some of the ladies tell us what preserves are. Oh, that's that one. And then that's the older stuff. That's the Tommy can. That the councilmen and forestry men used to boil their tea in that on the fire on the side of the road or whatever. And then they used the lid then for as a cup. Was the general plan of it.
I've heard them being called tea drawers as well. Anyone else heard them called
right.
tea drawer?
That is right. Now I put the handle off it, but not to worry. And this is more recent stuff that I got made. I was trying to find a tinsmith for a good number of years, but I located one around the Traveller community. What was it, Pavey Point or Pavey Point? And they put me in touch with a gentleman in Dublin. And he's the last surviving tinsmith. I spent a half a day up there with him, and he made them when I was there with him. Oh, that's the mugs. Smaller one.
What's the man's name?
Seamus Collins.
James Collins.
Yeah, you probably know him. He made that. He made all those there. I have more at home now, but that's basically what he made that one there with the jug. Shaped all that now by just a hammer and whatever.
And the big bowl beside your hand, was that made by the man from Enniscorthy?
That's the made by the man in Enniscorthy, man, the Conors as well.
Will you hold it up for people to see?
Yeah. He made that about, what, 3 or 4 years ago. That's what I did. I brought in a copper cylinder to him. And he made that for me.
And the man who made that, if I'm right, is that old Andy Connors?
Yeah.
He's 90 years of age, or 91 or 2, was that him?
He would be now, I'd say.
Yeah.
He was 82 or 3 or 4 or something when I was in there with him.
Wow.
It was the time of COVID, actually.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have been in there. Yeah. Can I tell you a story on that one?
Sure, go on.
I was telling the traveller man, little Andy Connors down on Fairy Lane, some people know him, I'd say. What I'd been up with Seamus Collins, and he said an uncle in Enniscorthy does that. So we agreed to meet in Comoran at Lambert's. This is the week before Christmas, on the first year of COVID. So he got into my car and we headed for Enniscorthy. Coming back out of Enniscorthy, after having the chat and the tea and all in place in the Shannon, and at Skerrywell, just at this side of the Skerrywell's roundabout, on guard they were stopping. So lucky enough he stopped on the traveller side, or on Andy's side, passenger, and let down the window for him. He asked, "What's the nature of your journey?" And Andy says to him, "Well, just after leaving a couple of bags of sticks," he says, "with a poor old man." And we got waved on. That was the funny side of that one. But a week later I got my bowl. That was the story of all that. That's what it is. So that's it.
Thanks a million, Steve. Right?
Not a bother, not a bother. And we didn't get the phone.
These two met. The first place we met, they were building the new hall in the rock. And they built the new hall around the old hall. And I was going out to Noel Murphy's over there to play solo. And I saw they were building the hall. So I said, I better go up the next evening. So I went up and I met him in the floor. And he was pulling out the old hall that had been dismantled. And I gave him a hand and I introduced myself and he introduced himself. And the next thing, Johnny Anderson came in and started washing mugs. Yeah, Johnny said, "No, is he washing them in the muck and dust that's here?" I said, "We're trying to get this out." "I have a fucking meeting here in half an hour," he says. But anyway, that was my first introduction to Mick Murphy. And with him, the two Higginses, Bernie Fortune, Harry Bushe, Brendan Byrne and a few more like them, Jim Redmond, the hall was built and finished. It didn't cost a lot of money, but it was built and finished and it's there still. Now, he said to me one night, "We'll go to turning classes." Willie Stedman, the great turner, was giving lessons at the time. We went to the turning classes, but there was only one turner. I was only the old fool making up the number. Mick learned to turn, and this is an example of his craft. He made this for me from start to finish out of elm timber,
The Dutch elm disease was rampant at the time, and there was elm trees to be got everywhere. They were bulldozed into the ditches to get rid of them. But Mick sought out all this and turned it and put it together. And the only thing we had to buy for it was the bit of material. We bought that off of Tom Nolan and the 2 sets of springs underneath it. But after a long time, Mick said to me, would I give him a loan of it? They were doing a commemoration concert for the late Tony Crehan, accordion player supreme, in the Theatre Hall in Gorey. So I said I certainly would. And what they wanted to do was like the little accordion down there. They wanted to see his accordion in the chair. So they brought it off anyway, and he came back to me one day and he says, I have bad news for you. He says, sorry, what's wrong? He says, your chairs have to be broken up in Gorey. Sure, say if it is, it is. And he went in and he brought it home and he took it asunder and rebuilt it and put it back to the exact condition that it's in now. And I think it was a marvellous achievement and the start of a lifelong friendship between him and I. Mick Murphy's chair. This lad here beside me, he came into our family when my brother Seamus's young lad was a baby. He was bought. And Seamus reared 6 of them with him, and then he came to our house and we reared 4 of them. And then he was sort of abandoned and he was gone rusty and dirty. And my granddaughter arrived on the scene anyway. She's 11 years of age now. And she played with it every day. And one day she came home from school and came in to me and she said, Granda, I want you to do up the rocking horse with me. Right, so what do you want to do? She says, I want to do them up. I want to paint them and clean them up. So all right, so I get ahead. So I gave her the grey paint and she painted the body. And then she painted the black bars at the bottom. And then she said, you may give me a hand to do the bridle and the numbness. So I slammed on the red paint and the yellow paint and the black paint on the saddle. And now he's looking forward to another 60 year. Maybe my great-great-grandchildren might play with him. But that's the story of the little rocking horse.
Thanks a million. What did you bring?
I brought along 2 register, well, a couple of books here, in particular 2 register, well, 3 particular, but there's 2 registers here going back that would have been used by the Department of Social Welfare. Well, the old age pension was introduced in 1908, and the pensions officers were introduced in conjunction with that to actually assess pensions and report to local committees, which were then set in, they actually awarded the pensions to the pensioners. And each pensions officer in their own office would have a register of every pension application that was made. And these were the registers that actually were used for that purpose. So the register would actually have the name of the person, their address. Now these ones, there's nothing in it. I came to get these when we were in, the office we were in was being closed down and moved. And like all houses and offices, there's always stuff that's put into a corner and stored and hoarded. And these were being thrown out, so there's no actual register of applicants in it, but it just gives you an idea of the information was actually restored. So they had the register of all these pensioners, and they would have been held in each office, and that's how the pension came to be. And then, subsequent to these were non-contributory pensions. Subsequent to that, the contributory pension was introduced, and that was based on your insurance record or your stamps. And people would coming up to pension age would be worried about how many stamps they had, but stamps were actually real stamps. And an employee or a worker, when they went to work, they got a card, and these were the cards they had, you see. So on the card was a place for putting in a stamp for every week to work. So every employer would affix a stamp each week to the card. And at the end of the year, those cards would be handed into the employment exchanges, and the records would be updated with the department. And that continued up until 1979. So you would have heard the common thing was people, oh, he got his cards. And got his cards was, well, when the employer was terminating his employment, he'd give him back his card with his stamp on it. And that was the origin of the term, he got his cards.
Oh, yeah, I never knew
so
that.
they were the cards that were used. There were women's cards, And the colour changed each year. So there was women, and then there was men's card as well. And in 1979, when the old stamps were done away with and the modern PRSI system came in, that came in on the beginning of the tax year, which was the 6th of April 1979. So in 1979, from January up until the 5th of April, you had what was known as the short year. So there was only 14 stamps up to the 5th of April, and that was the short stamp year there, as opposed to the year where you had the full 52 stamps on it.
And what year was that pension book from? Can I ask the first one?
That actual book was actually printed in 1952. Yeah, sorry, 1958 that book was printed. But that would have been a similar book to that would have been used from day one, if you like, when the pensions were awarded. And they were the pensions officers would have these in their offices. Now, in some places, the pensions officers there was colloquial names given to them as gaugers, right? And the reason for that was the pensions officer was formed as a result of the 1908 Pensions Act, which was a British Act because it was before the Irish state was actually even formed. And in the same year, the HM Customs and HM Excise were amalgamated. There was two separate departments up to that. HM Customs was one department and HM's Excise was another. And the Excise department was actually subsumed by the Customs in that year, and the excise officers were responsible for calculating the amount of duty that was payable on whiskey and on beers. So they gauged the amount of alcohol in the actual spirit and set the tariff on that for whiskey and beer, so the taxes were gauged that way. And because the excise officers were being subsumed into customs, some of them their posts were being done away with, and they were actually then reappointed, like government's departments even nowadays, that reassign people depending on if they're closing down one department or moving that. So they were reassigned to the actual department, or the local government department at that stage, which was actually looking after the pensions. So some of the original pensions officers were actually customs officers, and then the term gauger was given to them because they actually gauged how much you got coming from the gauging of the spirits that they got the calculation of the spirits from the whiskey for tariffs and that taxes.
So they were popular lads, were they?
Like the guys nowadays, they were still popular back those days. So that was the stamps. Now the last book I got here was my father, who's since departed. He was a postman, and his route was out through Askamore out into Carnew and that. And one of the places he actually delivered to was Mount St. Benedict out in Mount Nebo. And there was a gentleman there, the houseman was a guy called Jim Ferris, and there was the cook down there was Mary Kilty. And I got to know him. I used to, during the summer holidays, I would go with my father on the post. I'd sneak into the van house at the post office in Gorey. Health and safety didn't exist in those days, so you sat on the spare wheel and went around and helped him on the post for one day every month or so going around. And I got to know Jim and Mary because Abbot Trafford, who was the abbot in Mount St. Benedict going back then, his rule was that the postman had to get his breakfast when he called to deliver the post. So when my father would deliver the post, he'd get his breakfast to be ready for him when he arrived. They'd know what time he was coming in at. So I'd be going in with him and get a cup of tea and a sausage or a rasher with the rest of them there. And later on, when Mount St. Benedict closed down, Jim Ferris gave me a box of books from the library in Mount St. Benedict. And this particular book was among them. And I showed to you earlier on, and it's inscribed, the owner's name is Reginald T. Collins, who was chaplain to the forces in Portsmouth, and it's dated March 1890. And that was obviously his book. It was on about the Russian campaign during the year of 1812. That was the book he had. But when I was going through the book, the interesting thing in it was this document here. And this document was actually the recruiting document for Irish soldiers in the First World War. And it was issued on the 28th of October 1915 from Lord Kitchener. And as I showed to you earlier on, it is the actual document that if you wanted to join up the British Army at that time It was a document you actually signed and filled out, and it gave you there, it was a copy of the message that Lord Kitchener issued, and it dictated or set out the actual allowances that the signees or the soldiers got. So a single man with no dependents will be fed, boarded, clothed, and their pay will be 1 shilling per day. So that was their pay, if you like, back then, 1915. So anyone who signed up at that time, and you could actually set out. It gave you the list of regiments that you could actually join. If you were joining up, you could pick the regiment you wanted to go to. And some of the regiments at that time were serving in France, and it lists in the Levant you had the Royal Enniskillen Fusiliers, you had the Royal Irish Rifles, and you had the Royal Munster Fusiliers. So they were actually serving there as well. But there was for argument's sake, the Royal Dublin Fusiliers, they hadn't been deployed at the time, so they weren't actually listed as actually fighting anywhere. So if you actually put down the Royal Dublin Fusiliers that you wanted to sign up to, well then you didn't know where you might end up fighting. But if you went to the Royal Munster Fusiliers, you had a fair idea that you were going to France. So that was in that book. So that was from 1918.
So
1915, 1518.
So it's the application form to join.
Application form that you filled out to actually join. So the details to look for at the time was your age, your height, your occupation, your name and address, and then the regiment that you wanted to be to join up to.
Brilliant. It's gorgeous.
So is it.
Thanks, William, for bringing that along.
No problem.
Excellent. Thanks a million. Emer, what did you bring?
Well, you were just talking about the war there. These are my two granddads' medals, and like this gentleman said, like many families at the time, Tim was part of the Irish Guards, and he fought in the war, and there's his 4 medals, framed beautifully by Belfield Design in Enniscorthy, I have to say. They did the whole thing, they were brilliant. And this one, he's from my mum's side, Tim Hearn's from Castledermot in Kildare, and this gentleman is my other grandfather who fought for the IRA. He was a captain in the IRA. They never met. So I wonder, no, this poor man died. I never met him, unfortunately, but I did know Tim.
That's Tim. And what's
Tim Hearns and Tom Healy.
Tom Healy. And where was Tom Healy?
He's Tones, Kilmichael in Cork. And that's where my dad was born. And that's my dad, Sean Healy. And the history of this briefcase, it has travelled the world for, I think 3 times it travelled the world, twice if not 3 times. It had 3 different passports, not different, but different passports at different times, because at that time when you travelled, you had to have the stamp of the country you travelled stamped into it. My dad travelled so much that he had 3 passports full of stamps. Don't know where they are, unfortunately. The reason I brought these is my dad, Sean Healy, was born in Cork, and he went to Athy, and he started up the Mochra na Firma with a number of others in Athy. He was the first Mochra. He then went on to be one of the founders of the National Farmers Association in '55, and subsequently the Irish Farmers Association. And he was very much involved with the senior management on that, and he was General Secretary for over 30 years of both NFA and then IFA. And he achieved an entry in the Men of Achievement 76, Who's Who, What's What and Where in Ireland. He was a walking genius, bless him, but it wasn't hereditary, take it from me. And first in Ireland in everything. He got a degree in agriculture before it even existed, I think. But these were presented to him. That's the European movement gave in recognition of your outstanding contribution to advancing Ireland's place in Europe, and that was 2010. This was given by the International Federation of Agricultural Producers in 1963. Again, and that's Cuchulainn. It was held in Ireland, you see. And this he got in Rotorua, and my brother decided that Dad wasn't going to lose this, so he decided to scrawl his name all over it. and this book is The Path of Power, the 60 years of the Irish Farmers Association, and on almost every page my dad is there. But as you can kind of figure, he was very seldom at home. But I think his contribution to the farming community was outstanding, to be honest. He got the Men of Achievement, but this was one of his favourites. It was given to him, there's TJ Maher with him there, and Richard Deasy. This was given to him by the IFA National Council, and it's in recognition of the outstanding dedication, contribution of Sean Healy, GenSec, National Farm Association, in the Farmers' Rights Campaign of '66. My dad, it was his idea to have the march going. Richard Deasy walked as well. He started the walk, and apparently somebody mentioned to me earlier that that march got the respect for the farmers that was due for many, many years. Dad really tried to get rural and urban people to communicate, never mind talk, but to try to understand how they could help each other out. So I think he did manage it. He tried to set up what he called was the Agricultural Relations Bureau, and unfortunately it was the wrong timing. Politics and everything came in, and Dad hated, he wasn't really into politics, but he's very proud of that. He said, the Farmers' Rights Campaign '66, which was a watershed in recognition of farmers' rights, especially the right to negotiate with government, and also in recognition of a stalwart service as General Secretary of the Irish Farmers. So I'm proud of him. And the final thing, I have to show you this, is last week I was looking, I found these but about a month ago. Now one is, these are my dad's, and one is I put it down there. 1966, I think a lot of people got medals. Dad was presented with this. It was the 50th anniversary of the 16 Rising. And we found 2 half-crowns. And I couldn't believe it because I'd never seen these coins before. And I realised one has my husband's year of birth, the other has my year of birth on it. Wow. Never even knew these existed until about a month ago, so I'm keeping these ones.
You must be very proud of me, yeah?
Who, my dad?
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. I am, but everyone's proud of their dad. There.
And just to recollect for people, he set up Noctor and Pharma.
Yeah, he was one of the founders. Yeah.
And the IFA.
And the NFA.
Yeah.
And then the IFA. The night the IFA, no, the night the NFA, I think it was 56, 55, 56, was founded, the first meeting, my sister was born, and Dad's secretary came in and said, Sean, your wife's gone into labour. She'll have to wait. They were his words, but at that time you weren't even allowed into the hospital where babies were born. So that was how dedicated he was. Brilliant. He loved his job, he really did, and I think his contribution to me, I think he was great.
Brilliant. Listen,
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing them along.
Thank you.
My name is Billie Fanning.
And what did you bring today?
What I brought today is a plaque that was erected in the Botanical Gardens in Dublin in recognition of John Fanning's work with the Botanical Gardens. John Fanning came from out the road in Holland, Kilanerin, and John became a great horticulturist in his career. And he also presented gardening programs on the RTE. Through his work with the Botanical Gardens, as I say, this plaque was erected in his honour. Now, there is a little story behind this plaque, right? On one of my visits to the Botanical Gardens, the original plaque had gone astray, and they were doing up the cafe. But anyway, when they went to reopen the cafe after the renovations, they discovered that they couldn't find the plaque to put back up for John Fanning. So they got a replacement made. But like Murphy's Law, the original turned up, and the original went back up on display and there today in the Botanical Gardens. I turned up on this day anyway and got talking to some of the staff in the Botanical Gardens, and they were explaining the position, and they asked me, would I take this plaque on behalf of the Fanning family? And I said yes. And they asked me, what would I do with it? And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do with it. John Fanning came from Ahullen, and my son, John Fanning, is living in the Ahullen homestead. So I will bring the plaque back and put it in the homestead of the Fanning family original house in Ahullen. So that's where this plaque is today in honour of John Fanning.
Lovely. Thanks a million for bringing that along.
Right.
Sir. Francie, what did you bring?
I brought this pipe because grandfather was part of the pipe band. Obviously there's drums as well, but other people have these here. I'm not sure what the history and the story there is, but there's 2 pictures of pipe band in a book that was put out by the local community here, and in one of them you can see them holding these pipes, and Patrick Fanning, who was my grandfather, is in that. There's a picture of Patrick, and Patrick was, just heard earlier about John Fanning, so Patrick and Elizabeth, there's a picture of them both there, and they were his mother and father.
Is he in one of those photographs there?
He's in
He's in this one here. This one here. Which is in that book, actually, the Kilanerin book.
Oh, that is similar to one of the ones here.
Yeah, there's another one there.
And can you point them out to me?
Here.
So that's your grandfather?
That's, yeah. And I didn't get any of the musical talent. I didn't get any of the talents actually. But anyway, but Patrick Fanning, who was John Fanning's brother, he's mentioned in the book because he was a great accordion player, and you know, he would have the Kilanerins around Earle, they would have went all around to those and everything. So that carried on there, but I'm afraid it ended there.
You might take that up, will you?
Well, look at maybe the Ancient Boys Own band or something might start it up here in Kilanerin with a few of the. I'll do a whip around and we'll see who we got to play in it. But yeah, so no. But it is interesting, and you know, there was also other neighbours as well, because the Flemings lived beside us and they were in it as well. And there's a lot of other names of, you know, people. Stevens is down here. Mick Stevens. There's all, you know, there's plenty of the Stevenses there still around, and their father was very involved in music and all as well, and obviously goes back to the time of the band as well, because there was Stevenses in the band as well. So, you know, lots of other household names from around the parish.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thanks for bringing that along.
Not at all.
Good man yourself. While you're on, what do you have?
So I have an array of things here. This one first, I suppose, is a 1996 yearbook. Great year in the county when we achieved a remarkable success in the All-Ireland, and it has a Martin story on it. I suppose it goes through all the club stuff as well and everything like that, and then delves into the championship season as well. I think we all remember the excitement of it that year, and as a 6-year-old, I do remember the homecoming in Gorey and the just bananas crowds in there. Yeah, it was wild night. And then I have, I suppose, two things here that I popped up in the field back home during ploughing season. And that's actually Californian fig syrup. So it's just a bottle from that. I don't know, maybe 40s or 50s, I'm not entirely sure. This one would be more of interest to local people here. It's a Cousins and Co. Registered bottlers in Wexford. Possibly Gorey, I don't know. Cousins would be a local name, Wexford town. So yeah, it has their little logo and all on it. So yeah, it's a nice little piece of local history. This found out the back of my granddad's house. It's just a little present, I suppose, to him. It's a tiny little bottle of Guinness. It has the harp and James's Gate and all on it. I found it when I was constructing the treehouse. So yeah, that's where that came from.
You had some of those last week, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Show me what you have.
This is a Balls Anti-Curd company in Dublin. So any farmers around, hopefully you don't have calf scour or anything like that, but there might be a small bit of a drop in that left, so that's what that's for.
That's what
calf
it's for?
scour. Yeah. So that was the fluid or whatever was in that. This is actually my granddad was a very slight man, so he might have needed this for his belt. When there wasn't enough holes in the belt, he twisted it into the leather of the belt and just cut a new fresh hole in it, so he wouldn't have his trousers falling down anymore. And this is a file, just a normal file for metal, finished off metal and stuff like that. Maybe the mammy uses now for nails, I'm not sure. But anyway, I suppose to finish off on these two, probably the most important. After my grandfather died in 2001, as you do, I suppose you kind of look through his stuff and see what he had, I suppose. And in one of his old tweed jackets, we found this handmade leather wallet. And I suppose the curiosity got the better of us and see what's inside. And there's 5 coins, 2 of which I've brought in today. Pre-independence. So they were 2 penny, old penny coins, I think they were. One is 1906 and the other is 1914. They have Britannia on one side and also King Edward on the other side. Of the 3 others, there's one from 1874, which is the oldest one, and then 1916, I suppose, commemorates a tumultuous year in our past. I suppose maybe a little bit naughty, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but as an archaeologist, probably a little bit unprofessional. I'd heard of a Luftwaffe crash site in the Blackstairs Mountains, Blackstairs Mountain itself. So I had seen it on a local map, and I know if it comes to an excavation, I know exactly where I found it, and I will pop it back or register it properly. But it's a piece from the crash site. So it was, I think it was a 5-man crew, and they got into difficulty. Perhaps, I don't know, speculation on my part, perhaps they got into difficulty after being chased by the RAF up the Irish Sea or something like that, or else got lost on a bombing raid and maybe ran out of fuel or something like that, but unfortunately they ended up crashing into the side of the mountain itself, and I don't know what component that is, but it's a piece of that airplane anyway, so yeah.
Thanks, Byron.
That's it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Tess, what do you have?
My father's razor.
Gorgeous. What was his name?
Paprine.
And why did you bring that along?
Just brought it because he died very young. He died when he was 38, so.
Only a young man.
Yeah, so.
And do you remember him shaving?
Yeah.
Do you remember him using that?
Yeah.
God, and is it still working here? Someone saying in the background.
Yeah.
Lads. And why are you attracted to it?
It's just a memory of my father, like. So. That's all, really.
Brilliant. Lovely. And when did he pass away? Can I ask?
84.
And that's still going since 1984.
Yeah. Before that.
Go away on that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Listen, thanks a million for bringing that along.
No bother.
It's lovely, yeah. Isn't it gas, isn't it? That'll remember you of your himself.
Yeah.
There you go. Brilliant. Thanks a million, right?
No problem.
Good stuff. Lucinda, what did you bring today?
I brought a warming plate. And I brought a couple of books. But the warming plate, in the First World War, they would have used a plainer version of this, the Victorian. You put the water into the plate, hot water, and it would keep food warm.
Really?
Yes.
And is it ceramic? Is it metal?
This is metal. This part is metal.
Yeah.
And that part there is delf.
And who would use that?
They would have. Well, in the First World War, it would have been brought. I imagine it would have been the officers. The food would have been, you know, the hot water would have been put in it, a plainer version of this. But in the houses in the Victorian times, it would have been brought up from the kitchens, older, you know, up to bedrooms probably. Yeah.
Takeaway.
Takeaway.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And can I ask, I'm being nosy now, where'd you get it?
An old church.
Cool.
An old church. Yeah. It was actually my husband got it from an old church.
Lovely.
Yeah, in the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like a bishop or someone.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do you have?
I have books, and actually it's because of the connection with Mount St. Benedict. I'm actually living in the Gate Lodge, and John's story was very interesting, his find, and I'd be interested in his find. The first book I brought along was Maher Comerford. She's actually buried in a grave. There's 3 graves in a field behind Mount St. Benedict. Maher Comerford is buried in one of them, and she wrote this book called The First Dáil. She attended the First Dáil, and she was a secretary to this lady here, who is Alice Stopford Green, who was born in 1847. And this book here is a book written by, she was a historian. She worked for the historian, and this book here is a book written by, oh no, this isn't the book. Alice Stopford Green. This isn't actually the book, I forgot the book, a different one here.
And who was she again? She was an historian?
She was a historian, yes. But she has written a book as well. So probably in my bag over here, because I bought so many of them.
Yeah.
And this final book here, it was a centenary record of Catholic emancipation, and it was written in 1929, and so it's going back to 1829. And it's just interesting to see a lot of it is advertisement as well as the actual stories, but as well as the history. And one of the advertisement is related to the Carlo, to the sugar pulp. I just thought it was funny. If you let her down, she let you down. She can't produce well if she's not fed well. Give her a ration which will keep her up to the highest production, but in the best of health, and a ration containing sugar pulp for cows, pigs, sheep. But you know, a lot of it is advertisement. That's Carlo.
The early days of the sugar factory.
Yes, all of it is.
Brilliant. And come on, where did you get those books?
These, again, some of them old church, and some of them I went to the markets and bought boxes of books and picked up here in the Inch Market, going back over 20 years ago. 30 years ago I used to buy old books.
Brilliant. Now, and what else do you have?
Final is 2 letters dated 1906 from my great-grandfather to his mother-in-law. He was actually in Dublin Castle, and he was in the First World War. Again, it's related to war, and that was just a photograph of him as a child.
Take your time and let's see it. Who was that?
This is my grandfather, and that's his brother.
Do you want to show the people there?
Yeah.
And what was his name?
My grandfather was John, and his brother was Harry Palmer Bennett. Yeah. And he's John Christopher Bennett. Yeah.
And that man went off and fought in the First World War.
Yeah, Harry Palmer Bennett went off and fought in
Did he come back?
Yes, he did. He actually fought from Canada. He fought overseas from Canada. He had gone to Canada and he fought overseas from Canada.
He joined the Canadian regiment, didn't he?
Yes, yeah. Overseas regiment. Yeah. Okay. I have all his records. Yeah.
And what's the 1906 the letter?
It's written to his mother-in-law, saying that his wife is much, she's happy with that he had left the army at one stage and gone back. He was leaving, going back in. He saying that he had found work and she bought a little small house. And
will you let us open up the letter there? We'll be nosy now when we have you.
Well, it's because it's in bits now, because it's all, I have it in pieces now. I have
just a little bit of it. So this letter was written by this man to his mammy.
Yeah, it's written in 1404, 14th of the 4th, 04. So it's but even the handwriting is so nice. I just thought, yeah.
Brilliant. And where was his mammy? Back in Dublin?
His mother was up in Belfast.
Belfast.
Yes. Yeah, she would have been up in Belfast. Yeah.
Oh. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing them along.
Yes.
Sir, thank you. Now, what did you bring?
I'm originally from Corkcannon, which is about 1.5 miles away from here. I brought an embroidery which was done by my great granny at the age of 13, or 11 rather. She done it in Loreto Day School in Gorey, and it was her father, who was Robert Graham, who lived in Corkhannon, and Corkhannon was the first place outside Dublin or Belfast that the United Irishmen were formed way back a while ago. So she done this when she was 11, and it just shows the difference between education that time and now. So it's been in the family ever since, and it'll be there for as long as I'm there anyway. So that's.
And just to get my own head around this as well, that was made by that little girl, and her father was involved in the setting up of the United Irishmen.
Yeah, he was Robert Graham, and he lived in Corkhannon, and Corkhannon was the first place outside Dublin or Belfast where the United Irishmen were. We had a flag raising and all that there back in 1992, and the flagpole in there is still there, and the inscription on marble and plaque is there still, and so.
And was there any sketches of himself at all, or any little drawings?
There is, but I assume they're in the house in Corkhannon. So that's
brilliant. Maybe you might bring them along sometime, will you?
If I can get my hands on them, yeah. John and my brother and sister-in-law and their family live in Corkhannon, so.
The fact that here we are now, and we're a good few of us were here on Owler Hill, or on Vinegar Hill last night. You included, Brian Cleary and Owen Dunbar, and myself. So the father of that
girl
was set up the United Irishmen in
back
Wexford.
in 1873. She done this.
The United Irishmen was founded in Gorey in 1791. Yes. Sorry, 1792. It was only a year after Dublin. But Robert Graham was the delegate for the Wexford, and he was sent up to a big meeting at the Oliver Bond House, and he was actually late arriving. But when he did arrive, the building had been surrounded by the redcoats, and all the delegates were arrested. That's why they never knew was Wexford were planning a rebellion, because Robert Graham wasn't there, wasn't arrested. So that's
fantastic. Thanks for bringing that along.
No problem.
Gorgeous. Michael, will you show us a few of the things that you brought along today?
I'll show you one thing particularly, because that gentleman over there told me what it was. This came from Nigeria. It was a payment for slaves. That's right. It's in the family for 60 years. My brother-in-law worked in Nigeria, and this is stuff he brought as well, which is ebony or hand carved.
That was your late wife's brother?
Yeah. And a 1937 souvenir box.
The English royal family, is it?
Yeah.
How did you get your hands on that?
I don't know. It was probably sent to my wife's mother. That an old Jacob's tin. Now I don't know what year it was. It says for what does it say? Gilbert and O'Sullivan. So it must be. I know it's in the family there for over 80 years anyway. You know. And this here, I was telling Dave about it. It's the Wexford jersey of Wexford Town from Young Ireland's in Selsker, and I had it in my hands years ago, and it belonged to Murray's uncle's family, and I don't know the story of it, but it's wool back them years, yeah. And again, stuff I had brought the last day here, and I have a thing here sent to my wife's mother, signed by Captain Larry O'Toole, way back, don't know how many years ago.
Now, for people who don't know, who was Captain Larry O'Toole?
Larry O'Toole was, they owned Coraclow House, down in Coraclow, because my wife was born there. this is stuff as well that they gave her, or gave Mary's brother, who died last year. He was 90 years of age. And this, we reckon, is probably about 120 years old or more. And Captain O'Toole was in the English Army. And this was given to my wife by his sister, Misa, which was a handkerchief holder plus a silver pig pin cushion. Yeah.
And just for people who don't know, your poor late wife was a Coraclow woman.
Yeah.
She was. Mary, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the John F. Kennedy stories, what are they about?
This is she is a collector of stuff from the Kennedys and that sort of stuff, and the Popes as well. So I didn't bring all of them, but this was stuff that was given to, and then I have coins, $50 coins from Kennedy, with 3 of them for John F. Kennedy, and there's his head on each side. And this here, I'm a bit of a collector myself now. American quarter coins. I'm short one, I don't know where it's gone, but 50 of them in it surely anyway, you know. But I'll find the other one somewhere.
I see you've got your communion money there as well, have you?
No, I haven't. But I will show you this. 1932 from the Eucharistic Congress. And you can see the colours are still very vibrant on it.
That was a huge year in Ireland,
yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah.
And this here is a piece of the Berlin Wall. And a Churchill medal. I think it's Churchill. Or sorry, Isle of Man, American bicentenary coin.
Is there any other one thing that you might show us before we end on?
Yeah, I'll show you this one here now.
No, show us this.
It's a Child of Prague, and it closes.
No, where did you get that?
That was in my wife's books, boxes of stuff, you know. And this was in it as well. I don't know what it is, but going back some years. I have some more stuff. I should have brought them, but didn't.
You're all right.
If there's another turn, I will.
Yeah, you will. And the last one here, what's the certificate of?
The certificate is of a ship. I'll tell you the name of it now. Providence, a ship called Providence. It was dismantled in India in 2005, and this pen is a piece of the staircase
from the ship.
From the ship, yeah. Manufactured from the ship, a staircase.
Brilliant. Yeah. Listen, thanks a million, Michael, for showing me. Brilliant.
Yeah, right.
Da 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 da